Okay, so for this week's homework assignment, what we're going to be doing is kind of continuing our little train model, but this time we're going to start blasting it with details, okay? The first time we attempted this little project, it was just all about the very, very, very simple exploration of the form, the volume, the basic shape of the train. Now that we have some more experience with modeling, it's time to start infusing this little shape with a tremendous amount of detail, okay? So that's really going to be our mission this week, is to make a nice, really high quality model of our little train, okay? Now I've provided you guys with some excellent reference, a starting point if you will, down here in the resources section of the model, or the assignment sheet. Let's take a look at it. I've already downloaded them and unzipped the archive. Whenever we're starting a model of significant detail, we almost have to be little subject matter experts on the thing that we are creating. In blueprints, images like this are incredibly valuable because now we're able to see with much higher resolution the details that really suspend disbelief, okay? It's more than just the volume, the overall shape and the proportions of it, right? Because once we have those established, we can start adding the interior detail on the train that really creates a compelling model, okay? And this is where we put our labor in, okay? I always like to imagine these things as gigantic puzzles. How are we going to take the very rudimentary modeling tools that we have in Maya and use those to create more complex shapes? In every sense, this is going to challenge you on your kind of forward-thinking skills. Good 3D modelers are like good chess players. We have to think 8 or 9 steps ahead, because what we build on step 1 is going to determine what we're able to do on step 8 or 9. Sometimes we model ourselves into corners where we have no options and no other future roads towards the whatever shape that it is we're trying to make, okay? Your experience and your practice inside the skill of modeling is going to help develop that skill set, okay? And this is an entirely experience-based art form. It really is. Today, what I want to focus on are some additional editing tools that will help you understand how we can make some complex shape, and also start talking about the thinking behind creating complex shapes from very simple ones, okay? Often, the sequence is simple, but just understanding how all of these steps kind of dovetail together to create a more complex model is the challenge, okay? This is not one model. How many models would you imagine this is? A lot. This is like 80 separate pieces, right? Or however many, right? It's a lot of individual small pieces, okay? We're not trying to create all one connected, contiguous piece. It's a whole lot of small things all kind of jammed together, okay, to make the illusion of a more complex piece. The reference is always going to be our guide. It's our first step. It's going to make this entire sequence go a lot faster. I know I've mentioned this before, and sometimes it feels kind of rudimentary and kind of pedestrian to think that it's cheating to use reference, right? But it's not cheating at all. It's part of our process, right? In other art forms, it's highly discouraged to trace, right? To trace over our reference. Well, that's not our world. And for us in the 3D world, we want to use our reference as backdrop items, as like a glorified tracing guide, if you will, for us to very quickly recreate these shapes in 3D, okay? So it's more than just a starting point. It's going to be our map. Okay, it really is our guide through this entire adventure. Now for this model, you're making 2 different things. You're making, of course, the big locomotive itself, and you're also going to be making the coal car. Okay. Now there are some common elements between the two, and we should look for areas of efficiency, right? Let me just look at this real quick. All right, so here's the coal car down at the bottom and the locomotive at the top. Now, what would be some of those areas of efficiency that we can maybe draw focus to? Common elements between them. The wheels, okay. A good 3D modeler would maybe only make one wheel, but then duplicate it a number of times. It's not about working hard, it's about working smart, right? Sometimes even the small little platforms, the railings, bolts, and what have you, small details we can create once and then duplicate over and over and over again, right? This is another great opportunity for us to practice our mirroring tool set, right? It's not about making the entire train, it's about making half the train and then mirroring it across the x-axis. If we choose to use our origin as a modeling tool, it becomes a great workflow modifier for us, right? It honestly does become a tool for us to start plotting all this stuff out. So let's jump over to Maya real fast and start looking at how we can use these reference images to start flushing out our models, okay? Because we've been working with singular reference images for a while. Well, now we're going to be working with 2 reference images, and they have to work together to create the actual model itself, okay? I'm going to start off with the coal car, or excuse me, the locomotive. You do this exact same thing and process with the coal car. Let's just jump over into Maya, okay? And I have my grid turned off, but there it is. Let's look at my scene from the right and load in the image plane. See, train reference, oops, double click. Here's the side, voila. Now, let's continue to reinforce our practice here. We load in the image plane into the background of our viewport, of our camera, if you will, our side camera. But that's not the final step in this. What's the next step? We're going to flip it, right? We've got to make sure that the landmarks of the picture are pointed in the exact same direction as the general landmarks of our three-dimensional scene. The positive side of the z-axis is that landmark for us, because the positive side of the z-axis is the front of our universe, right? So we want the front of the train in the picture facing the front of our scene. Now, with my image plane selected, how can I do this real fast? Scale, right? It's negative x, negative 1, bloop. Now it gets popped around. That's an easy way of doing it, right? Easy peasy. Now the picture is pointed in the right direction. While I'm here, I'm also going to change the alpha gain. I like putting this down to 0.25. That way I can see through it a little bit and make it easier for me to see. Okay. In addition, so we got the train pointed in the right direction in the scene. Let's position it correctly. Orient, and then we position it. I think it'd probably be a whole lot easier for me, my little brain, if I positioned the train so that the bottom of the wheels were sitting in the middle of the y-axis, kind of like on the ground, okay? That's going to help me very quickly understand the spatial relationships and the proportions of all these different pieces, right? The ground plane, the grid, if you will, okay, can be a visual helper and a guide to us understanding how all these parts and pieces work together to make the train itself. So I'm going to move this thing up, okay? A little too far. Somewhere right around in there, and I'm pretty happy with that. There we go. So the side is done. Let's go over into the front view of the scene, and we're literally going to do the exact same thing. I'll go find the front reference for my train. Oops, I clicked on the wrong one. I don't want to do 2 sides. That would be catastrophic. Okay, now for the front one, we don't have a lot of orientation that we need to do because it's already pointing and it's already been oriented towards the correct direction inside of our three-dimensional scene. But its position in relationship to our grid can and should be adjusted. Okay, if we zoom in and look very, very close, the author of this image did us a great service by producing a center line for us on the actual picture itself. Thank you, CAD engineer. Okay. Or whomever made this blueprint drawing of the train, okay? I really appreciate that because that's a modeling guide. It's a helper for us. So I want to make sure that when I'm positioning this image inside the grid itself, okay, that center line is just sitting right at the center of the x-axis. Now, I don't assume. I always make sure that it's sitting there, okay? Much like we did on the side view of our scene, I'm going to position this image so that the bottom of the wheels are positioned right at the center of the x-axis, somewhere right around in there. It's pretty close. Okay. I'm going to jump back over into my perspective view, and this is what we got. I'm also going to change my alpha gain for this new image plane to 0.25. So there it is. That's what we have. But there's one last thing that we need to do in this sequence before we start modeling, and this is the part that everyone skips, and it's the good double check, right? We need to make sure that all of our reference, okay, all of our image planes are working together, that they're the exact same size and scale to each other. We've aligned them and oriented them to the global three-dimensional scene, but now we need to align them and orient them to each other, okay? We need to make sure that the details in the pictures are the exact same size, okay? And the best way to do this is to actually just throw down some geometry and use this geometry as a gigantic measuring stick. And I'm just going to go into my poly modeling shelf and create a cylinder. And let's do this real fast. I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees along the x-axis. Okay. Let's turn on a little X-ray so we can see through the mesh and start having some fun. A little too close, sorry, that's even hurting my eyes. All right, so what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to align this little cylinder so that it roughly matches the diameter of the boiler, of the fuselage of the train, the best I can make it, right? So somewhere right around in there. Yeah, and it steps down and starts to, I'm looking at the bottom. You can just barely see the bottom of the boiler down here. And I think I'm pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that, okay? Now, if both of the reference images are aligned to each other, I should be able to go into the front view and see the diameter of that cylinder. And if it matches what the picture has created in the front view, I know that both of these images are working together correctly. Let's look at our front view. Ah, yes. And I'm pretty happy with that. The diameter of that cylinder matches the diameter of the boiler in the front picture, right? So now we've confirmed that the size of both of these pictures are the same. As 3D modelers, we can never assume. We have to have concrete information on whether or not these images are the correct scale to each other, okay? Because oftentimes they're not, okay? So the only way to be sure is to be sure, okay? Is to have really great data that supports our understanding of all this. So this is starting to look pretty great. So the big picture here is that we want to be able to use both of these reference images to very quickly flush out some overall shapes, right? Now, it's important for us as 3D modelers, again, just to block things out real fast, okay? We want to remember our technique. We're not trying to model every single little bolt and detail initially. We're trying to very quickly flush out, paint with a broad brush stroke, if you will. Flush out the overall dimensions of our little train. And let's just do it real fast. I'm just going to kind of zip through this. Something like that. And we're going to come back and edit these shapes a little bit later. I want to get some really good spatial information. I'm going to go into object mode, and I'm going to turn off the visibility of my backdrop in object mode. Okay. Let's do it for both looking through camera. There we go. Because I just want to see my train, if you will, in this front view. Okay. There it is, starting to look pretty great. Let's go back over here. I'm going to turn on my X-ray once again so I can see through my mesh to the image behind it. And let's start very quickly fleshing out some basic proportions, okay? I like to remind folks, especially in this early stage, practice our craft. Think like try to make the shape just like a traditional modeler would, okay? If you're sitting in front of a lump of clay, you need to block out the overall planes and the volumes of your shape first before you go in and start scraping in all the details, right? So I'm going to quickly create a cube. This cube is going to be my temporary placeholder for, excuse me, there we go, for this thing, the cabin. I don't know, what do you want to call that? Is it a cabin? It's something, right? And now from the front view, this is what we didn't have in that previous assignment. We didn't have that front information, okay? And this speaks very, very directly as to why we go through the process of finding and collecting all these reference images. Because now I have direct info as to where all these polygons need to go, right? So check it out. I'm going to grab that shape and I'm going to scale it up along the x-axis. Something like that. Yep. That's a good representation of how big that piece is. Yep, pretty happy with that. I'm going to duplicate that entire shape, bring it down just a little bit, because if you look very carefully underneath it, there's a little stand, okay? something like that. Go. Looks like it kicks out a little ledge for the train conductor to stand on, and we're on our way. The other big pieces that I'll definitely want to start to iron out pretty quickly are maybe the location of some of these wheels. Okay. Oops, looks like I didn't quite make this section large enough from the front. There we go. And now I'm starting to get a much better understanding of how all these shapes are going to work together to produce the illusion that I'm after, right? Just blocking it out, literally just exploring at this stage. Let's get the wheels in there. The wheels are an important element, so let's just do it real quick. F11 to go into my poly selection mode, E, and then I'm going to hold down J while I click on the handles to rotate this kind of how I want it, somewhere right around there. And I'll squish them down. Look at my scene from the right so I can start exploring how all the size of these wheels. Okay, the wheels are going to be a little bit of a fun project for us. Wheels are in every sense kind of like little puzzles. Okay, especially with all this lovely interior detail that we're going to need to construct and craft. These wheels have a lot of interior shapes that are not difficult to create, but in every sense speak towards our modeling sequence. So I want to return to the wheels towards the end of class today and start exploring how we can put all this stuff together, because they really are a collection of pieces. It's not just one thing, right? It's not one interconnected piece. It's a whole series of interconnected pieces. Okay, let's figure out where the wheels need to be. And I'm going to guess that this line right here is where the wheels are. And that's just a legit guess. Okay? And the reason I have that guess there is if you look carefully, this big center circle, that's probably this thing in the side. So that's probably where the wheels need to go, because that big piston, there's a pusher arm on the side here. This thing goes out and back, which then turns, pushes this rod, which pushes the wheels and makes the train go forward and backwards, right? So that's going to be my guess as to where these wheels need to go. Let's just look at it in perspective and get a good sense. Yep, I'm pretty happy with that, and we can start building it. Okay. F11 once again. Here's a great little trick. Okay. Now I want to duplicate this wheel just to continue blocking out, excuse me, how all these pieces are going to work together. Of course, we could just do a Command D, within object mode, we could just do Command D, duplicate that shape. Now we have two. That works just as well. Does anyone know another way that we can do that without having to duplicate the shape? This is a great trick, because I want to duplicate the polygons, but not necessarily the objects themselves, right? So check this action out. If you hold down the Shift key, okay, now, and I have the entirety of that shape selected, right? If you hold down the Shift key while the Move tool is still on, you can drag out a copy of it. Okay, we kind of duplicated the polygons. We didn't duplicate the actual object itself, because if we were to go over here into our object menu, okay, all of those shapes are still on P cylinder 2. Okay, so that's a good little time saver for us. We don't necessarily have to duplicate all those objects. We can just hold down the Shift key with the Move tool. Let me do it one more time. Holding down Shift, see how the tool changes, the word extrude pops up. If an entire shape is selected, the Shift key will basically duplicate that shape, and I don't think Of course, now it's not going to work for whatever reason. Well, the other thing that can happen with that, if you have just single faces on it, you can extrude it out that way too, which is kind of fun. But since it's, for whatever reason, deciding not to do it on me, come on now. Well, it may have to be the original. That's a good question. Nope, that's all right. I want to keep moving on. Let's duplicate it You could always need a couple more wheels. There we go. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. I just need to block out some shapes. F11 to go back into faces. Let's just move these copies around a little bit and get this generally where I want it to be. Somewhere right around in there. Awesome. Because why I was saying it doesn't really matter at the end of the day is that I want to start combining all of these objects, right? When we're modeling, we're going to create a whole series of independent mesh objects over here, but I want to start combining them and adding them together because I don't want to, it's my job as the modeler to be a good steward of my scene and not to create a scene that's got tens of thousands of separate objects in it. That turns into an uneditable mess that you're just not going to be able to control, right? So combining these shapes from time to time is really helpful. I find myself doing it very, very often. I'm going to go into the modeling pull-down menus. And it's right here under Mesh, Combine. Okay. Now Combine is going to take all the selected objects in my outliner and physically kind of combine them together. This is different than grouping, by the way. Some of you guys experimented or exploring this during office hours this week. It's different than a group. It's actually a reduction of all these objects into one. Boink. Okay, there it is. And the first thing I do when I combine it, see all these things with the little red arrows? These are references back to the original independent mesh objects. We don't want those references anymore, so deleting the history will remove all that stuff. Okay? Because remember, Maya keeps object history on everything, even combined. Every operation that you do, Maya is going to remember. Okay? Often, we want to disassociate this object from its past so that it's independent and can move forward into the future cleanly. Right? All right. Aha. This is starting to look good. I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. Starting to look like a train. Kinda. Let's very quickly, again, let's just go in and start adding in the illusion of some smokestacks. Now as I start to block this out, I'm just looking at proportion. There are a lot of details, and this smokestack here is such a great example of the details that I'm going to need to go in and infuse. Now is not the time to do the details. I need to get a complete picture first, right? Let's see if my extrude works now. Oops, I'm in the wrong. Yeah. No, it's only going to do it once today. I got to reset the tool properties. I think that's what's getting in the way. But that's okay. You can see how quickly I'm trying to get through this, right? I want to spend my time exploring the details, but the overall proportions are really important. Okay? So I can't stress them enough. All right, looking good. Let's create one more, and then I'm going to stop because I could literally do this all day. My big problem is that I am a 3D modeler, so I want to sit in here and model with you guys. But there are other things that we need to explore so that we can facilitate the construction of this. There we go. Let's go into object mode. I'm just going to combine all these once more. And of course, delete the history. Let's turn off our onion skinning. And now we're starting to get a good sense of the total volume that this thing is doing. I would honestly go through every major part, okay, and block it out. Because we want to make sure that we have a really finite understanding of the complete picture before we jump in and start modeling the details, right? Because the details are going to influence each other, right? You don't want to spend an hour modeling a crazy detail to only discover that the next piece completely ruins the thing that you just spent an hour modeling, right? That's why we do these broad brushstrokes. It kind of preserves our workflow and saves our energy and our time in the app and in our sequence so that we don't waste anything. Okay. Now, I think I'm going to put the cube in here real fast. This cube is going to, in every sense, going to represent, let's see, there's a bottom here. Yep. I think the bottom goes to right there. Yep. Pretty close. Let's look at it from the front. See if that matches, and it's way too big. So we'll just scale it down along the x-axis, and we're good to go. Somewhere right around in there. Other details that are important for me to discover and continue to evaluate as I go through this, of course, are going to be big pieces. These little piston things on the side, those are big for me to establish. Let's see, they look to be about right in there. Yeah, that looks to be the conclusion of it right there. Where is it going to go in the front? That's what we need to figure out. Oops, looks like I was off in its size. Yep, there we go. Okay, one more piece. I know I said that was going to be the last piece. I just can't stop. Hashtag can't stop, won't stop. Sorry, that's a bad hashtag. Hashtag relatable, yeah. I like it. Oops. Come on, there it is. This is going to be right about in there, and I'm good. All right. Let's combine all these objects once again. F8 to go into object mode, grab them, combine them, and then delete the history. Okay. Zip out of there, and we can just barely start to see all these pieces unfold in front of us, right? Now, on this blockout stage, I'm really not trying to make a good model. I'm just trying to understand the model, right? I'm trying to understand the total boundary of where this object is going to take place, okay? And then from there, we can start modeling inwards, okay? This is, in every sense, the box modeling technique. We've talked a little bit about this in the past, but box modeling really is this. We start with a basic shape like a cylinder or a square, and then we start to slice and edit that cylinder or square into more finer parts and pieces that represent different areas of the model itself, okay? This is the detail in method, okay? So we start with a big, broad brushstroke, and we go into the details. There are other modeling techniques, like a loop modeling technique, where it's the opposite. It's detail out. We start with for a while, the really popular practice for doing faces is you start with the eyelid, right? And you model that eyelid just absolutely perfect, and then you add one ring on top of that, and you slowly, radially build out the rest of the head. That's detail out. We're doing the opposite. We're doing detail in. We're going into the detail, okay? We're starting with a broad brushstroke and going in. So let's talk about how we can start going into the detail a little bit. And there's a lot of really great opportunities here to talk about this practice, okay? I want to start with the basic boiler of my train real fast, okay? Now, there's a lot of stuff in this train. Now, this rough out model is just a starting point for us. It really is, okay? So we have to ask ourselves some pretty good questions here. Do I want to edit what's there or rebuild it, okay? Sometimes just rebuilding it real quick is the answer that you want. It will take, at times, it takes longer to rebuild something than it is to build it over, or than to edit what's there. Excuse me, I misspoke. But let's just look, F11 to go in my poly selection mode, okay? Let's just look at how we can work with this fuselage as is, okay? Now here's a great little trick. On this one object, I got a bunch of stuff. I got a bunch of other different poly pieces in there. Okay, I got the little smokestacks on the tops, the wheels, the under part of the train. There's a lot going on. I have the center boiler selected, and maybe I just want to work with that one piece. Okay, did anyone discover how we could do this? How we could turn off the visibility of all the other polygons in our scene? This is a good one to have in the back of your memory. Okay. If we go into the display pull-down menu, okay, we have hide. Hide selection, hide unselected shapes. Let's do that one. Ta-da! Now we can turn them off. Now they're just temporarily hidden. We didn't delete them. The visibility of those polygons have just turned off. You have to manage this, okay? Because there's nothing in the app that says, hey, there's hidden polygons on here. So if you've forgotten that you hid some polygons and think later on that you deleted them, you know, only you can prevent forest fires, as they say, okay? So you got to remember that you hid some stuff. Now, if you need to get all that stuff back, luckily, if you go into that exact same pull-down menu, display, show, and then you do show selection, show less hidden, show all, and they're back. Okay. There are keyboard shortcuts associated with that. Lets you kind of explore that on your own. I'm not like Mr. Keyboard guy, mostly because I use a pen tablet whenever I'm modeling, so I don't really have a keyboard right in front of me. Okay. Let's go back. Display, hide, hide unselected. And now I can start really focusing my energy and efforts on the details of this train. Okay. Now, if you look carefully on the train itself, on the boiler of our train, there's a whole series of straps that kind of go around the big boiler itself. And in my imagination, these pieces of metal are kind of like belts that are hugging the metal to ensure that it just doesn't explode under the extreme pressure of the steam, right? And what I'm talking about are these straps in here. Well, how can I edit the existing shape to get those straps? I'm going to do that real fast. What are some modeling tips, some suggestions in here to start those shapes? We don't have to exclusively use the extrude tool like we did on the coffee cup, or the candlestick for that matter, to create these shapes. Maybe if we paired it with like the slicing engine, we can go in and start making this work. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to go into my modeling toolkit, and of course we got the good old multi-cut. Multi-cut's such a great tool. It's a super tool for us. It really is. It's going to do everything that we needed to do, okay? Most everything that we needed to do. There's a reason why they have multi-cut, bridge, extrude, and bevel all right there. Because you can do probably 80% of your modeling with those 3 or 4 tools. Okay? Multi-cut's pretty rad. We've looked at multi-cut before in the past, but the purpose of multi-cut is really for us to go in and cut new edge spans into existing shapes. Okay? And the way multi-cut likes to work is if we start on an edge. That way, the new verts that were created start there and go all the way into there. You can start on the interior like this, but that's, you know, you're kind of getting into some bad form and some bad practice there. These floating edges are going to cause massive problems inside of our entire sequence. So we want to try to avoid placing edges that aren't connected to an interior, or excuse me, to an existing edge span. That's going to cause some problems. Yep, and I got an errant vert in there. There it is. Control backspace. Woo! I broke it. There it goes. Now I've removed all the multi-cutting. Now multi-cut is more than meets the eye, because if you hold down the control key, now we can go in and slice in what's called a loop slice, right? It's going to cut all the way around our cylinder and connect back onto itself. That's called a loop. Now we've talked about loops before. Does anyone remember how we can select a loop? Yeah, just double click will work. So you got to be in edge mode, and then just simply double clicking on the edge will select its loop, and then we can continue to do any number of things we want with that loop. Okay, I'm going to control backspace to get rid of it. Now, if we look at our train, we have a whole bunch of slicing in here that we need to do. Now, multi-cut will allow us to do that pretty easily like that, which is cool. Okay, just hold down Control key and clicking on the edges, and it's loop slicing. But check this out. There's another way that we can use multi-cut. Multi-cut is like a freaking laser, man. Okay, and wherever that laser goes, it's going to slice the mesh. Okay, check this out. This is pretty neat. Notice that my cursor is above, off my mesh over here. Now, with one mighty fail swoop, I'm going to left-click and drag a line through my mesh. Watch this. So I'm going to left-click and drag. See that orange line? I can recognize that may be a challenge. See that orange line there? Okay? That's my freaking laser, man. Okay? Where that laser beam goes, I slice my mesh. Okay? So the slice tool, or multi-cut, is a fantastic tool, but it doesn't lack the precision that the other method does, right? You got to be really good at using the slice tool to get the result that we're after. Now we have to be careful when using that freaking laser, man. Okay, let me show you why. I'm going to, just for illustration purposes only, I'm going to put a new cylinder into my scene. Okay. I'm just going to roughly put it behind, there we go, behind the other guy. All right. Actually, you know what? Yeah, this will be fine. And F8 to go into object mode. I'm going to combine these objects once again and delete their history. Now they're all in one mesh. Okay? Now you got to be careful with the slice tool because it really is a laser, man. Okay? Whatever is on that orange line is going to get sliced. Okay? So anything that's behind the geometry, as our friend is, okay? Because remember, we have this guy in the back and this other cylinder in the front, right? Two of them. Okay, now watch what happens. Yeah, question? What if they're hidden? We'll find out. Yeah, hang on to that thought. Hang on to that thought. There's some other ways that we can influence this. So watch what happens now. Multi-cut. Oops, sorry, my fault. Okay, it's a freaking laser. It's going to slice all the way through our scene itself. Not only did I slice this guy in the front, but I also sliced its friend in the back. Okay? This entire system can be leveraged a couple different ways. Okay? First and foremost, the thing that I would suggest is just making a selection. Whatever is selected is going to be edited, right? So with the front cylinder selected, the multi-cut tool is going to behave a little bit differently. Let's check it out. Same thing, but now just the front cylinder is selected. Same thing, but it only sliced the front cylinder, okay? So whatever is selected is going to be as edited, right? It didn't slice that back cylinder because it wasn't selected, okay? So our selection engine is kind of like a filter. It tells the tools which polygons to influence and which polygons to edit. Now, the question was, what about all the unseen stuff? Let's find out. Didn't touch it. Okay? So if they're hidden, if they're not seen by the slicing engine, they're not going to get sliced. Okay? So a couple different ways for us to very quickly go in and add interior detail to existing geometry. Now, multi-cut is a great tool. It's a great tool. But for something like, let me get rid of this thing in the back. This is just for illustration purposes alone. Okay. All right. So another option that we have is under Mesh Tools. Okay. Now the Mesh Tool system has a lot of really great tools, and we're not going to go over every single tool inside of our toolbox, right? It is impossible. Okay. Because there are so many. I'm wholesale jealous of my colleagues in the graphic design department, you know, because they have like 3 or 4 tools that someone has to manage. I have to manage hundreds of tools. There's just so many. There's so many inside the app itself. It's kind of ridiculous. And we're only seeing the modeling tools. You have the animation tools, the rigging tools, the simulation tools, the rendering tools, and it starts, you know, this is why I'm starting to get gray hair, right? But one tool that I like to encourage folks to go and use is the Insert Edge Loop tool. Because the multi-cut tool does a really great job of putting it in there, but at times you just want, oops, I'm sorry, I clicked off of it. Let's do it again. Insert Edge Loop. Then you click drag. Ooh, it's not doing it. Why isn't it doing it? That's my fault. My fault. When I was deleting things earlier, I didn't delete all the verts. Didn't do a control backspace, and I just did backspace. My bad. I still got my insert edge loop tool on. There we go. Triple check. Yep. Now it's all gone. Because insert edge loop tool does a really great job. It gives us that accuracy that we're after, right? You just click on an edge span, and then boop, there it is. Okay. Of course, once we've added it, we could always go back in and change its position rather quickly. Let's do it one more time. We'll insert the edge loop one more time. Voila, as they say. And now I have a whole strip of polygons that I can use for my next sequence. Okay. So I've sliced in a couple new edge loops that I can use to start creating those bands that go around the outside of the fuselage here, right? At times, sequence is important. I think of the big picture, I want the size of that band and the size of that band to be the exact same, right? Well, if we want them to be the exact same, what if we extrude them at the exact same time? That ensures beyond any reasonable doubt that the same values are being applied to both polystrips and we're getting a pretty consistent result. Let me show you. So we have both of those loops selected, and now I can start extruding them out. That's pretty huge. Okay. Is there a way that I can, kind of see how when I'm changing the values, it's doing by just a tenth? Is there a way that I can do maybe like change the values by like 100th? Yeah, I can hold down Control. Okay. Or here's another great power user trick. Now that you guys got some experience, ever wondered what this little blue dial is? This is going to change the units of measurement, okay, or the fineness, if you will. Okay. Now it's in integers, but now it's in thousandths. So the smaller the pizza pie in that dial determines how fine of a value is going to be thrown down into these channels. And maybe something like that. That looks pretty good. Ta-da! I'm liking that. That's good. And we're on our way. Okay. Okay. Now for more complex pieces, like maybe some of these risers in here, we're going to have to look at a slightly different production practice. Okay. Not everything is going to be editable. Sometimes we're just going to, it's just faster if we rebuild these things from scratch. Okay. For example, this thing here in the center, I might as well just rebuild that from scratch. It's got this transition down here at the bottom. I'm going to delete it, and then with a new shape, let's just make it real fast. Okay. All right. Off to the races. Let's just position it real fast. Get this going. Now, I'm going to scale this thing down. I want to see if I can try to match the diameter here. Somewhere right around there. That's pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's a good place to begin. Okay, so there's my shape. Now we've got to start figuring out how to extrude this shape so that it integrates down into the boiler over here. Now, there's some detail on the boiler that I'm still going to need to establish, but there's enough there that it will allow me to get to work. And I think the extrude tool is going to allow me to do most of the work. Okay, let's look at it from the front. It's kind of hard to see with all that stuff. I may have to turn some of it off. I'm also, with my X-ray, it's kind of hard to see as well. But luckily for us, we can get a good sense of that side profile from this right view. Okay. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about just my own experience in 3D modeling and from looking at a lot of 3D models is that the human subconscious does an excellent job, and I mean an excellent job of picking up on small little incongruencies and curves, right? Our brain can spot a curve that's misshaped a mile away. So I like to go in and ensure as best I can that little curved details like this are consistent, okay? Now, experimenting and controlling the consistency of that curve from time to time can be a problem. So let me show you a great little trick. I'm going to use the extrude tool. And of course, I'm going to grow, let's see, go in the opposite direction. I always do that, by the way. There we go. Now I'm going to extrude this shape until I think that that vert, the one that's right there on the corner, is kind of in line with the outside of this band. Okay. And I think I got a little bit further to go. Right about there. That's pretty good. I'm going to hit the G key to refire the tool. Oops, I didn't hit the G key. There we go. There we go. Now I want to bring down the thickness until it's at the bottom. And then now, G key again. No, is my G key not working right now? That's okay. I refuse to let the computer win. As my Obi-Wan Kenobi character would say in my life, keep your eye on the cook machine. You'll have a time to experiment with and to explore why certain things are working and or not working. This is not that time. One last extrusion. This one I'm also going to give it a little bit of offset to create the taper. Okay. Voila! There we go. Looking pretty great. Now it needs to go into the bottom of that a little bit more. And it is totally okay to do that. Okay. You can completely bury polygons into each other. Okay. That is totally fine. It is absolutely allowed. It's part of our workflow, so don't feel discouraged to do it. I'm just looking at the size of that bottom polygon. It needs to be a little bit more. Well, there needs to be another edge loop in there to get the actual taper shape. Let's just do that real fast. Something like that. There we go. All right. Now I can go in and start working on creating that radius for that small little bump out. Okay. I defined the total extents of that radius, the boundaries of the radius, right? The Bevel tool does an excellent job at transitioning between two existing planes. Okay. So whenever you're trying to make consistent curves and consistent radiuses, the Bevel tool is perfect for that. It really is. But we need to define the boundaries first, which is why I squared it off with the idea that I'll just come back in after the fact and start doing this. Okay? So the Bevel tool is designed, let's just increase my segments here. There we go. Fraction, yeah. All right. And that's pretty good. You can even go all the way into the center like that. Oops, I'm sorry, I zoomed out too much. And now I have a pretty much perfect radius there. Okay. One thing to note though, if we continue to play around with the fraction, see how right here we have two edges, and then as I increase the fraction values, they kind of bloop. They look like they combined, right? Are you sure they combined? Because there was two edges, and then we pushed the fraction value to a point where those two edges went on top of each other. I do a good double check to make sure that those verts are welded, because at times it doesn't. Okay? I like the radius that I've created. This is looking awesome. Maybe add a couple more segments in there to make it look, it looks wonderful. Okay? But now with that operation done, let's do a real good double check. Yeah. And I'm just doing some investigative work here. Yep, okay, I'm in vertex mode. I just did a boundary selection, a marquee selection, and my modeling toolkit is saying that I only have one vert selected. So that's usually a good indication that those points are welded together, and then I'm free to move on. All right, let's keep cruising here. Because now I can start rocking and rolling here a little bit. Oops. Okay. So I don't really have a good understanding yet as to what this next band is going to look like. So I'll have to kind of pretend, and that's fine to pretend, okay? Or you can slice it in after the fact. You could totally do, maybe just do a little bit of this, okay? A little bit of offsetting. Go. Now my G key is choosing to work. I don't think I was hitting it correct enough. Huh? Yeah? I think for me, I was not hitting the key enough. There we go. One last time. Up in the thickness. Now, if you mess up as I just did, don't worry about it, okay? Because you can always go in after the fact and change it, right? So I totally botched that edge right there. It's not in the right placement to reference, okay? It just doesn't look like I hit it, okay? At all, actually. Yeah, I think I did a poo-poo of a job. So you can just scale it up, okay? Until you're happy with the angle there. I'm just looking at the slope of the top here, and that looks pretty good. Let's run extrude one more time. And now up here at the top, it appears as though offset out, ooh, a little too much, just a little bit. G key, thickness, and then we do some more offsets. G key. If you want to get crazy, I mean, you certainly could. I like crazy. Oh, I went a little too crazy. Okay, I missed what reference is saying, but that's okay, because I can always go in and we don't have to start over, right? You could easily go in and just make some adjustments to all this, okay? That's the cool thing about 3D modeling is that we don't have to restart every time we make a mistake. We can just edit what's there. Now I've selected those two loops down there at the top of my model. If I just hit the scale tool, of course I can just scale them up. I want to do it coplanarly, okay? And that's what these little squares are down over here. If you look carefully, the translation tools or the scale tools allow us to, scale things or manipulate this object independently on each axis. The gold one does all three axes at the same time. But these little squares, these are coplanar handles. They allow us to manipulate the shape on two axes. And the way I think of it is, whatever color I'm choosing of my handles is the axis I'm not working on, right? So if I grab the green one, I'm not scaling these things up and down along the x-axis. I'm only increasing the diameter of the two selected edge loops. So I can just do that, not having to worry about them getting taller. Looks like I'm so close. There we go. That's good enough for me. Now, from time to time as 3D modelers, we're going to have to fill in the gaps here a little bit, okay? We did a great job of fleshing out a lot of the fantastic details of this little smokestack here, but this is a smokestack, right? Smoke is supposed to come out of this thing, so it makes sense that there'd be some sort of interior opening on this part of the mesh, right? Much like our coffee cup, we have the functionality and the ability to do that just by extruding once again. And this is where I got to pretend a little bit and start imagining myself as the engineer that created the shape and go, well, how thick do I want to have this opening be? That's pretty good. Hit the G key again. Oops, looks like I got some, what is that? Well, that's lovely, isn't it? Let's figure that out. Is that the other part here? Nope. This is my cross to bear, as they say. Often I cannot chew gum and walk down the street at the same time. Yeah, I got some duplicate geo in there, and I got to figure out why I got some duplicate geo, and then move on. So here's what I'm going to do. This is live troubleshoot. I'm going to delete those polygons. Oh, look, I got magic edge in here. A rogue offset. What is that from? All right, well, I got to figure that out. Looks like maybe it came from a couple modeling steps ago. I probably didn't extrude without doing anything. So let me fix it real fast. Yep, there it is. That was probably it. Yeah. Oh, nope. It's actually a little bit further down. There it is. Now I can see down. Okay. All right. Let's fill this hole real fast. Cool. And with that polygon selected, we can continue our work. Of course, where am I in my modeling sequence? I'm not going to go through the exact same level of detail that I went before just because I'm running out of time. But this is starting to look pretty great. One more extrusion down. Things are good. I didn't fix the problem. Gosh darn it. That's okay. I refuse to lose, by the way. You don't want to play nice with me? That's fine. You don't want to play with me? That's cool. I don't know where the problem is. I don't care where the problem is. I'm going to fix the problem just by deleting the problem children. There we go. Fill that hole. There it is. There's our little smokestack, and we're on our way. Okay. By roughing out the basic shapes, we're able to go in, much like we did before, bevel. Okay. I'm a big believer that all shapes need to have a small little radius on them. Okay. And I want you to look very carefully at this. I want to see, let's do this. I have an idea. Oh, that's awesome. Somehow that piece got disconnected. That's okay. I don't care. I want to duplicate that entire object. And we're going to do some investigation here. Okay. On this one, I'm going to go in and I'm going to bevel these edges up here. Okay. Every major, oh, that's going to cause problems for me. Here, I'll just do the top ones. Every plane change, okay, and this is a plane change because we're going from this plane to that plane, okay. Every plane change needs to have a small, simple little radius on it, okay. There's a couple reasons why, and they don't need to be anything super incredibly detailed. We don't need to have a zillion segments on them, nor do they have to be incredibly big, okay? But they need to be there. Let me see if I can create a composition that showcases why. All right. I'm going to go into my rendering shelf and just throw a directional light in here. Voila! Okay. Let's go over to Arnold, start running the preview, and I'm going to grab my light because my light's intensity is just not good. Let's make it a little bit brighter. Did I grab it?
You could always just increase the exposure.
There we go. That works too. It wasn't updating, and I think that was my fault. Okay, I want you to look very, very carefully at these two shapes, okay? They're not perfect in any sense, but look at the radius here in comparison to what's over there. One of these are fundamentally the exact same model. They're duplicates. The only difference is that the cylinder on the left has that small little radius on it, that small little edge bevel, and the one on the right clearly does not, okay? Which of these looks a little bit more realistic? Yeah, the one on the left. Why? Why does it look just a little bit more realistic?
It's really hard to get real, like, straight 90-degree angles in real life?
It's impossible. It's impossible to have a perfect 90-degree corner. It's always sometimes it's perceivable that's 90 degrees, right? A piece of paper may be the only thing, right? Everything in our world has a small little radius on it, okay? It could be 89.9999998 degrees, but it's not 90 degrees. We lack the physical manufacturing capability to make a perfect 90-degree corner. We can get very, very close, but not perfect, right? The only place that can get perfection like that, computers, okay? And artistically, what we're gaining by this, and this is really what's most important, is a specular highlight. See this right here? We're catching the light, okay? We're creating a small little specular hit going around the rim of this. It's catching the light like a real object actually would, okay? Without that specular hit that we're getting around the boundaries of the opening of our smokestack here, it doesn't feel like it's grounded in reality. It doesn't feel tangible, right? Without those small little specular highlights running around the boundaries of a lot of these radiuses, our objects are going to feel light and weightless, okay? They're not going to feel physically based. They're not going to feel like they're part of an environment that includes a reflection of the light source, okay? So radiuses are important. We want to have natural transitions between these plane changes. Now on the left over here, I've just put, I think maybe 3 or 4 segments, okay? However, let's just do it over here. Yeah, go ahead. And the smoothing tool? Like the actual smooth tool? Yeah, we can talk about this. There's some huge differences, okay? Because I'm doing edge beveling, okay? And we're going to come back to the smoothing tool here in a minute. But even if you were to just do a simple chamfer, as it said, okay? Let's compare it now. I mean, that's better, okay? It's better than what we had before. At least it's catching the light and giving us a little bit of an understanding of how these two different planes are transitioning between each other. That's better. So we don't have to have 8 segments in there and make a perfect radius. That's not the goal. But we want to catch the light. This is what's going to make your objects feel far more real, okay, and grounded in some sort of understanding of a physical universe, okay? Now the question was, what is the difference between the edge bevels and the smooth tool? The smooth tool, in all honesty, is kind of a buyer beware, okay? I like to think of the smooth tool as a candle that melts our mesh, right? It puts the mesh under tension. Imagine there's a miniature black hole in the middle of our mesh, and we add geometry and then pull all of that geometry towards that black hole, okay? The best example, perhaps, of this, and I do it so infrequently because I try not to do it. There it is. Yeah. Okay. See how it kind of melts it a little bit? We're physically adding more geometry. Almost exponentially more geometry into the mesh itself. Okay? The edge bevel allows us to strategically put little radiuses in there. Generally speaking, there's going to be a damn good reason to use the smooth tool, right? Because it's kind of a global operator. It's going to smooth all the polygons or whatever it is that you have selected, right? Yeah, I try the smooth tool in all earnest. Okay, next week we're going to talk about the modern day alternative to the smooth tool. The smooth tool is kind of a system of 20 years ago. We have a new surface type in 3D modeling. Actually, it's not new, but the preferred one is called subdivision surface modeling, and we're going to be talking about that very directly next week. Because sub-Ds are a way for us to interactively smooth our shapes, kind of get something like that, but at the same time, go back to an unsmooth state, okay? If you check out this cylinder over here, and I've done it across the entire object, unfortunately, that's okay, but I can always go back, okay? So sub-Ds allow us to smooth shapes out. We're going to talk about how we can control this and how we can take advantage of this next week, okay? But then we can go back to an unsubdivided shape and continue working. Okay, more on that next week. A little preview of next week, subdivision surfaces. It's going to change your modeling world. It's awesome. Okay. All right. Oops. Oh, I got a lot of problems in there. Okay. All right, so this is the process that I would go through when I'm modeling a high-resolution object like this train. Okay? Block it out. Paint with a broad brushstroke. Don't start cutting in detail until you have a really good understanding of what is needed, okay? And how that's going to benefit the total piece itself, okay? If you can see it in the reference, try to make a model of it, okay? Try to make a model of it. One of the little hitching points that a lot of folks get stuck on are these little pipes that run up and down in here. Those are actually kind of an easy thing to make. Does anyone have any ideas of how we can make a pipe that kind of bends and curves? Yeah.
Rotating one of the ends.
I like it. You can slice it up, then rotate it a little bit. That works. I got another way you can do it. Okay. Check this out. This is pretty cool. I want to make a new cylindrical shape. I'll just move it out over here. Okay. Make this thing a little bit smaller, pipe-sized, okay? Come on, computer. There it is. All right. So maybe I want to, this is the vertical part of the pipe, this is the horizontal part of the pipe. Well, we can connect these things with the bridge tool, right? We've talked about this in the past. The bridge tool is great. Let me turn off X-ray so we can see what's going on. Now I've got to get rid of these caps first. Control backspace. Control backspace. Oops, grabbed a little too much there. Come on now. What did I grab? Oh, I had the edges selected too. There it is. Cool. All right. So now on edges, hold down the Shift key, grab that bot, select both the openings. I can run bridge. Okay. With the default divisions, that's not so hot. That's not hot at all, right? But if we increase the divisions, come on, there it is. Oh, and curve type. This was me monkeying around with it earlier. If we put it back to curve or blend, I'm sorry. Now you can see that it'll create these nice little elbow joints in there. Okay. It's pretty cool. That'll do, right? You know, I think if I remember, the curve one is, it's trying, how can I explain this? I don't have an example that I think really concretely demonstrates that, but it's trying to curve it. Okay, so instead of just doing, you know, if this is our shape, instead of doing just a perfect transition between there, what curve is trying to do is it's trying to do a transition that looks like this. Okay, it's trying to make kind of like an elbow and a shoulder on both sides of the bridge. All right. All right. So that's a fast way to go in and start transitioning shapes. Block it out, bridge it. Okay? Yeah, so the wheels, I want you to take just kind of to heart what we've been talking about by blocking it out and looking at the pieces. Okay? Now, if you look at the wheels, you know what I'm going to do just for clarity. I'm going to hide all this stuff. All right. It's not liking me. Hide selection. There we go. I'm going to get rid of the light too. All right. So if you look at the wheel shape itself, start breaking it down into a whole series of pieces, of smaller pieces. If you're trying to model the wheel as one interconnected piece, you're going to fail every single time because that's a difficult chunk, okay? However, if we were to take a step back and look at it, this may not work. I have this cool thing called the grease pencil. Let's see, is it going to work? Kind of, but that's almost imperceptible. That's a little bit better. Okay, if you look at it, of course you got all of this jazz in here. That's one piece. This, and here, this cover, that's all one piece, okay? Of course, each spoke, you could model those individually as a piece, and then just do a duplicate special that we've talked about in the past. That will work, right? That will work, okay? This little bit in here, okay, that is its own piece. So really, a wheel is about 10 different pieces all kind of pressed together and to make the illusion of one. Okay? And if you do it once, then you just combine it onto one object and then duplicate that object 8 times. Poof, you're on your way. Okay? Can you guys see that grease pencil stuff? Kind of weird, huh? Gotta figure out why it's so transparent. All right, other questions for our work assignment this week, our modeling assignment? This is it. This is why we come and do this, right? Oops. This is in every sense why we've chosen to be 3D modelers, is moments like this.
Okay, so in terms of creating this model, if every single detail doesn't end up happening, like every single thing, if that,
Yeah.
if like you end up like missing a couple of things,
I'm going to fail you if you miss 2 things. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Just try to make it as detailed as you can. Detailed as you can.
Oh.
Yep.
So I noticed that like the references for the coal car and the train engine are different. Does that mean that we make them both into separate models and then try to like combine them?
You could. So the question was, are they separate Maya project files? They certainly could be. If that's easier for you, you can absolutely make a separate Maya project file. And then at the end of the day, they're going to land back into one Maya project file, right? So if you modeled your coal car separately, which you're okay to do, right? At the end of the day, just do File, Import, and import that coal car Maya project file into your train, and then all the objects are going to be together. Make sense?
One more thing. So are we going to have to do the railroad tracks?
Yeah. That's easy though, right? That's easy, right? Duplicate special. You guys remember the whole duplicate special thing? No? All right, let's talk about duplicate special before you guys run out. Because duplicate special is going to allow us to do the coal car, or the train tracks really easily, okay? All right, so let's pretend that that is my railroad track, okay? Or my railroad tie, excuse me, okay? Duplicate special, if you look at the options under duplicate special, what this allows us to do is it allows us to create a whole bunch of them, a number of copies. We want, I don't know, 10 of them, okay? And we want to, you can duplicate the input connections. That's if you want to continue modeling this after the fact, but for a railroad track, you probably wouldn't need to do that. But we want to move these. We want each duplicate to get moved a certain number of units, okay? So what axis is probably along the Z? Yeah. So this is the X column, Y, and Z, okay? I want to move these things 10 units along the Z. So every copy is going to get moved 10 units from its previous one. Okay? Now I did it positively along the positive Z. If I wanted it to go backwards, sorry, -10 if I wanted to move them back. Okay. It looked like -10 was too much, so let's do -2. There we go. And this is going to make 10 of them going backwards in a line. Okay. That's fun, isn't it? Other questions? This is going to be a puzzle. It's a good puzzle, right? This is a fun puzzle. This is what we signed up for. I want to make one too. Why not, right? Actually, I've already made this train. I'll show it to you. I'll show you my result next week.
So is that a small train or a big train?
Yes. These are selection sets. You can just delete these. All of this jazz over here, they have zero bearing on the geometry. It's part of the object history. Yeah. I've been working for a while without deleting my history. If you go back to like this guy, for example, and look at its object history, and I know you guys got to go. Yeah, look at all the object history in here. That's going to get in the way after a bit. If Maya starts to chug, delete your history, okay? It's a lot of data that it's trying to manage on the back end of its database, and sometimes it doesn't do a real hot job with that, so just deleting your history will clean things up and make it more efficient. It truly makes it independent. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next week. Good luck. May the force be with you.